Breaking news, President Trump knew exactly what was going on in Ukraine. That is according to Lev Parnas, the indicted associate of Rudy Giuliani. He was helping him dig up dirt in Ukraine on Trump's political rivals, and he is speaking out tonight. Here's Lev Parnas.
What do you think is the main inaccuracy or the main lie that's being told that you feel like you can correct?
That the president didn't know what was going on. President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all of my movements. I wouldn't do anything without the consent of Rudy Giuliani or the president.
In terms of the president and what he has said about you, he said about you and Mr. Fruman, Igor Fruman, I don't know those gentlemen, I don't know about them, I don't know what they do. You're saying that was not a true statement from the president?
He lied.
Caitlin Collins is out front at the White House. Caitlin, look, this goes directly against what the President of the United States himself has said. Has the White House responded to any of this yet? This is obviously just coming out.
No, nothing from the White House yet on this. They're still going through all those materials that were released overnight, those messages implying that the ambassador Yovanovitch was surveilled when she was in Ukraine. And of course, as you heard there, the president, when we first asked about his relation with these two men, because of course there are photos of the president with them after they were indicted and they are known Rudy Giuliani associates, he tried to distance himself from them, saying he didn't know them. They just had taken a picture, but he was not familiar with them at all. So, Aaron, the White House is now dealing with this as they are still trying to cobble together their defense team for the Senate impeachment trial. One of the main points of contention right now is still whether the president is going to include those Republican House members on his defense team. That's something they've gone back and forth with over several people: John Ratcliffe, Jim Jordan, Doug Collins, several of these members, Mark Meadows included in that, of whether or not they're going to include them, something that Mitch McConnell has advised the president against, but the president's own instincts tell him he wants to have who he believes are his most fierce defenders on the floor, though Mark Meadows, there pictured in the middle, said there is still a debate going on over that. Now, what is more firm is the actual legal team, the attorneys who are going to be presenting this. That's the White House counsel, the president's outside attorney, two more deputies in the White House counsel's office. But the question is if they are going to add any more attorneys as this process goes on, because our sources have been telling us that in the coming days, they may decide to add as they go along, saying it wouldn't be that unusual because they think Bill Clinton did something similar. So that's really a big question, is that they're going to add another attorney to the mix.
All right. Thank you very much, Caitlin, from the White House tonight. Out front now, White House correspondent for the New York Times, Maggie Haberman. Also, Tim Naftali, who was the director of the Nixon Library, and former Nixon White House counsel John Dean. John, let me just start with you. You just heard Lev Parnas. He says the biggest thing that's inaccurate is that the president didn't know what was going on. Quote, President Trump knew exactly what was going on. He was aware of all my movements. How significant is this? He directly, by the way, says President Trump lied when he says he did not know Lev Parnas.
It's very significant if he can prove it. If it becomes his word against Rudy Giuliani and the president, he's going to lose. His statements will have no sway in the trial. He's got to have some proof of this. While if there's corroboration, say contemporaneous statements to others, that could help. But he really needs good evidence to make this important information.
I mean, Tim, because here's the thing: we just played what Mr. Parnas said, right? Mr. Trump was aware of all my movements, and Rachel Maddow asked, in terms of the president, what he said about you. He said about you, I don't know those gentlemen. I don't know about them. I don't know what they do. And Lev Parnas says he lied. Let me just remind everybody about what the president said about Lev Parnas. Here he is.
I don't know those gentlemen. Now, it's possible I have a picture with them because I have a picture with everybody. I have a picture with everybody here. I don't know them. I don't know about them. I don't know what they do. But I don't know. Maybe they were clients of Rudy. You'd have to ask Rudy. I just don't know.
Okay, so Lev Parnas is saying that that's a blatant lie. I mean, as John Dean said, it's whether he can prove it, but it is a huge accusation with very significant implications.
Very significant, and this is one of the problems when you're trying to assess a criminal conspiracy, that the participants in the conspiracy are not terribly credible.
I.e. Lev Parnas is being criminally charged.
That's right, and so they have interests in protecting themselves. And so, as John Dean said, you're going to need some third-party information, as John well knows, there's nothing better than tapes or a document. And so what the House managers will be looking for, and I suspect some senators will want to see, is some kind of corroboration of what Parnas said. But the fact that Parnas has said it is important because he is part of that special corrupt group that Giuliani put together to put pressure on the Ukrainians.
And it does fit, of course, Maggie, with what others have said, and it fits with Rudy Giuliani's own letter to the president of Ukraine, which said he's acting at with the knowledge of and consent of the president of the United States. You're reporting that Rand Paul, Republican Rand Paul, is saying Trump is of two minds on witnesses. Sort of had been hoping he wouldn't have any of them, whether it's someone that is, sort of a damaged witness like Lev Parnas or someone else like John Bolton. But you are hearing some new reporting on John Bolton. What are you learning?
So John Bolton is almost done with the book that he has been working on. Simon & Schuster is supposed to publish it. It will come out, I think, well before, if not somewhat before, the nominating conventions this summer. And he is going to talk about his time in the Trump White House, according to people who are familiar with what he's going to do in this book. That is going to include the Ukraine scandal. Now, how much depth he's going to get into on it, how much he's going to reveal, I think that remains to be seen. As far as I understand it, there's a bunch of people who are not going to come out looking great. One is Mick Mulvaney, the acting White House Chief of Staff. One is Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State. And one is Nikki Haley, who had John Bolton's old job as UN ambassador, the one he held in the Bush administration. It is interesting because it's coming at a moment when Bolton has played a bit of this game in terms of what he's willing to do with Congress.
Sort of don't want to talk,
I don't want to talk to one House that's led by Democrats, but I will talk to one that's led by Republicans. And I think he is trying to sort of have it all ways, where he is trying to look as if he has complied with legal obligations. He is trying to look as if he is open to telling the truth about history, but he also wants to preserve his Republican alliances, frankly. And I think that's going to be an interesting push-pull as we go forward.
Does the president, from what you understand and your sources, expect that John Bolton will testify at this point? Or is he still hopeful that doesn't happen?
He's still hopeful that that doesn't happen, and he still expects it's not going to happen based on everything that I have heard. But again, you have had these conversations that are taking place among Republicans about maybe we can do a tit for tat. If we have a John Bolton testify, then possibly we have a Hunter Biden testify. And I've heard from several people close to the president that is what they're going to push for if this ends up being them calling witnesses. I just want to be clear on this. We have been led to believe that Bolton knows a lot. We have seen over years of this White House, there are indeed a number of people who know things, and then there are a lot of people who say they know things and they don't. And so until we actually hear it from him, it's hard to assess.
Put him as like, this is the humdinger, you don't know.
We just don't know.
Do you have an O.J. Glove moment?
Right. I would argue that, frankly, Mulvaney's testimony probably is equally, if not more important, because he was having these direct conversations with the president. John Bolton's relationship with the president was pretty bad by the time this was all going on. So I'm not saying he doesn't have an enormous story to tell. I'm sure he has lots of things to say, but whether it would fundamentally change the arc of what we know in this impeachment issue, I don't know.
Which is actually very crucial, because as you point out, it's Mick Mulvaney who gave the order for the aid, and there's people who said that came from the president. John Dean, as Maggie's talking about Trump still hoping that there will be no witnesses, he is extremely focused on who is going to represent him. And he wants, as we all know, some of his most loyal defenders in the House to be under consideration, even though Mitch McConnell has said, I do not want those guys. They will make this seem unserious. Here, just so everyone may remember, here are what these guys are like.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
The gentleman's not recognized.
I have a point of order, though.
The gentleman's not recognized.
Mr. Chairman, there are four transcripts that have not been released.
The gentleman is not recognized.
Holy
Ranking
cow.
member.
The last 30 days, I've heard more about Hamilton from my Democrat colleagues, and until then, the closest they ever came to Hamilton was a $10 bill.
These aren't all of the deposition transcripts. These are just the 10 that have been released. The word bribery appears in these 3,500 pages exactly one time.
Nancy Pelosi does it again, and her Democrats fall right in line. One, they're in love with terrorists. We see that.
So, John Dean, will one of those gentlemen appear on behalf of the president as part of his defense team? Do you think he'll do it?
Well, I'm very familiar with that group, having testified in front of it recently. And when you tell the president not to do something, he very much wants to do it. And the way he makes his judgments is how he thinks it'll play on television. So there's no telling what he'll come out. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to push one or more of those people into the team representing him. And I think Mitch McConnell is right. the Senate will take some offense if these guys play the clown act. Today we saw that Mitch set the tone. It's very solemn. It's very serious. He said, let's rise above petty partisanship. Well, that's unusual coming from Mitch. He does respect the institution of the Senate.
And Tim, obviously, the White House is saying today in background, they had a call with reporters, extraordinarily unlikely this goes beyond 2 weeks. You think that is wishful thinking?
I don't see how that's possible. The Democrats have to give. They've got 7 managers. They have to lay out the case against the president. The president wants to have this chance to respond, and then and then you'll have a vote on witnesses. And even if the vote goes the wrong way with regard to witnesses, you still have to give the senators time to consider the charges and then vote. How you do that before the State of the Union, I don't know.
All right, the State of the Union, of course, is right now scheduled for the day after the Iowa caucuses.